Hey everyone, welcome. Episode number 32, Social Selling for Newbies. Brandon, Carson, good afternoon.
Hey,
Good
Tom.
afternoon.
Hey, Carson.
How you doing, gentlemen?
And good afternoon to hopefully everybody who is coming on here because we have a really interesting show today. We're going to be talking for the third time in our illustrious 32 episode career about social selling by the numbers and some new statistics and some new data that have come out. So excited about that. And for those of you who are just coming on to listen, the way this is going to work is that we went through, each of us picked our top three out of a big list. So we're going to see which of the top three resonate. And Brandon, do you want to tell everybody who our show is sponsored by today?
Yeah, forgot about that. Let's do it. So, we've talked about our Modern Seller HQ community, which is our free give Butch. I love it.
I demand a recount. This is a red one.
I love it. For those of you on the podcast, before we even got to the dad joke, Butch just put in the comments, "I vote for Brandon." That's great, Butch. That's awesome.
I think
Let's
Butch
get
is
back
further
to
from here on out is disqualified from any dad joke voting.
I'm surprised we haven't
fine.
gotten a "Let's go, Brandon" in the chat.
Oh gosh, I'm sure that'll come now. But anyway, hey, for everybody on the podcast, in the comments, wherever, hey, we've been working really hard the last several months and building up Modern Seller HQ as a free community. Lots of momentum. I think in there we now Rachel Simon joined as one of the coaches, and she published something really, really awesome today about LinkedIn profiles. Mark Clausen, who was our guest, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes ago with IBM, is a global sales coach. He's in there as one of the hosts, one of the coaches, and he published something really, really cool today about the Air Jordan movie. And of course, you got the three of us in there as well. But so Modern Seller HQ, and then specifically, we've launched 2 new programs in there. We've launched the Inner Circle. If you want to get access to us knuckleheads and the tactics that we talk about, the tactics that we use, the Inner Circle is a paid for community. We go live in there every week. We do Q&A in there. You get access to all of our different videos. It's all archived. It's $149 a month if you want to be a part of it. Go check out modernsellerhq.com, specifically find the Inner Circle. And the last thing is, this is new for us, is our VIP program, which is where a company can bring us on, one of us, all of us, part of us, as a fractional digital selling coach and trainer as part of their organization. They get a private section of Modern Seller HQ, and we come in and work alongside their sales leaders. We help overcome some of the biggest challenges, whether it's getting those initial conversations, whether it's moving a deal down the line a little bit, overcoming challenges or objections. But we work with them specifically around how do we use this new medium of LinkedIn to help move those deals along and create more first conversations. So that's our sponsor. We finally have a sponsor.
Exciting.
Well, 32 episodes. We did it.
And a sponsor. There we go.
Sponsor. All right. Well, let's get into everything. And I don't even know if we should do the dad joke challenge because Brandon, you've already run. But just as a formality, why don't we go ahead and do that? And because you're the winner, Brandon, why don't you go ahead and start with today's?
Well, you know what? I tried this one a little bit earlier. I was on a Zoom meeting, and I told one of my jokes, and no one laughed because it turns out that I'm not remotely funny.
That one's not bad.
That's not bad. You must have told that to Butch earlier. That's why he voted already.
That could be. Butch knew.
Yeah.
Butch knew.
All right, Carson, how is ChatGPT going to compete with that?
Yes, every week I ask ChatGPT to rival Brandon with a dad joke, and this week's it's, why did chicken coops only have 2 doors? Because if they had 4, they'd be a chicken sedan.
Hmm.
I must say that I think I'm going to vote for ChatGPT today.
Yeah, I think I am too. I think I'm going with Chat GPT. Good job, Carson.
It's a good one.
Uh,
Which
And,
means,
and
Carson,
you know what's great about AI is it gets smarter as you train it, right?
yeah.
So
Does
it's just going
and
to get
Brandon?
better and better.
what it says about me is I get dumber as you go on.
Right. You don't
That
all
just
these.
means you're going to have to level up if you want to beat ChatGPT.
That's
All
right.
right, Brandon, Carson, everybody. Oh, Dave, everybody is going Carson today.
You
So,
know, it's funny. I can't take credit for these. I'm just typing. That's all. So
Mr. GPT.
there you go.
All right. Well, Carson, because you're the winner, you get to start with
Yeah.
some of our social selling by the number statistics. And like I said, each of us are going to kind of go through each of these round robins. So, what's your first one, Carson, that you want to talk about today?
Yeah, and I want to thank Tom for finding this article. I think let's share that,
Yeah.
with Joe and the show
Mhm.
notes and the link. But you know, ironically or not, I picked a few that were very specific to B2B sales stats because they spoke to me. They resonated with me. Number one, the first one I chose, and these all kind of tie in together. So I'm not giving a specific ranking, but 75% of B2B buyers and 84% of C-level executives are influenced by social media when making purchasing decisions. Let that sink in for a second. So basically says our buyers, our audience, who we want to connect with, who we want to talk with, who we want to create and nurture relationships with, they're influenced by social media, period. So I think that tells us, and like I'd love to get you guys' thoughts, but I think what that
Mhm.
tells me is that the people that I'm wanting to go out and connect with, and then ultimately over time, I'm, commenting on their posts or I'm, giving them information that shows perspective that I have or my organization has. Social media is a great place to make those connection points. And I'll give you an example, one that I think is poignant and resonant for me. During this journey, I think I've shared a little bit too about kind of my white whale, my Moby Dick executive, and we're getting real close. We've actually we've traded a couple of comments on one of their posts. We've traded some book reviews. We've traded compliments for each other, and yet we've never actually spoken on the phone. Both of us are very busy, but we're both very aware of what we're doing together. So I'm working with a lot of people that work for him, as an example. But we have a lot of interaction on LinkedIn. But what's amazing to me is the level of posting that this executive does, and he's pulling a lot of public articles and social posts and things like that he curates and that he posts. And he, like me, is has a very prolific LinkedIn presence. And so I've found it really amazing that not only are these executives that a lot of us are wanting to connect with becoming more and more prolific on social, but also it's a great place to meet people, even if it's not the methodical way of just sending them a LinkedIn message, a connection request, or an email.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I also believe that because you're reaching more people in an organization where more people obviously have access to social media within an organization, you end up with more influencers to the buying decision than maybe you normally would if you were just talking. So you may be dealing with executives who are the quote decision makers, but there's a lot of influencers now as well that are weighing in. And by using social media, you can reach those influencers as well as the executive, and really sort of be considered the leader or the thought leader in the space there. So I could see where that totally happens.
You know what I think with that too, and your example is a great illustration of this, Carson, is our engagements in social media substitute for that face-to-face interaction in this sense, in that we see people, we see them, they're commenting, they're posting, we comment on their posts, they comment on our posts, we comment on same posts. We're getting their face and we're getting their name in front of us. We start to get a feel or a belief about who they are as a person. And that's why a lot of times we'll say that, social media can turn a first meeting with someone into a hug instead of a handshake, meaning you feel like you know the person. and all you've done is engaged with them on social media, but you feel like you know them. And when you're dealing with competition, right, you're dealing with trying to move a deal down the road, and get it to a close, and they feel like they know you, even though you've never, in your case, Carson, you've never had a conversation, but you've got that connection because of social media. I think there's a lot of power in that. And then to piggyback, Tom, what you were saying is, and you're doing that with lots of people in the company at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's no wonder. And we were, you mentioned Rachel Simon, Brandon, who's one of our faculty members in the community. A lot of what she's doing more and more is helping executives get on LinkedIn. So I
Yeah.
think, Carson, you're going to see, as you were pointed out, I think more and more every day, more and more executives are getting on LinkedIn and having a presence there. So it's going to continue to have more opportunity rather than less. So that number may even continue to go higher.
Yeah. It's a good point.
All right, Brandon, what's yours?
So I'm going to go to this one. It's from Anthony Barnum. That's where the data was taken from. And it's 98% of B2B enterprises see value in social selling, but only 49% of them have developed a social selling program. So what it's saying is half the people say, yeah, there's value in it, but don't have a formal program. And I'm going to add this to it just to throw the curveball at it a little bit. I'd also want to know what that, for the roughly half of them that said they have a formal social selling program, I always ask a question, what's included? Because too often a social selling program is all about the profile, making sure everyone has the right headers, their picture looks good, they have a headline, they have an about section, and they say something about their current job that's, well, like those are the 5 key things, which I think is great. It's necessary. But if your formal social selling program stops there, that's like training your team how to get dressed for a networking event, but then never telling them which networking events to go to, or training them how to have conversations during the networking event, or training them on what to do with people you meet there after the networking event. You've just got them slick and cleaned up and look good, but then what?
Yeah,
So
that's a good point on what does it mean? I would suspect you're right. I would suspect the 49% is more or less what you just described is we do something to help with LinkedIn profiles or using LinkedIn. Carson, what do you think?
We've talked about before where, people's definition of social selling is very different. And I think sometimes that's out of necessity because our audience looks different. So the way to meet them looks different. But to Brandon's point, there's a pretty fine line between seeing value in social selling and the methodologies and actually executing it well, and also executing it consistently over time. And so absolutely, I would challenge that as well. I mean, I've seen more and more organizations adopt formal training programs even around digital selling, but how are they tracking it? I've seen people put a lot of emphasis and weight on a social selling index. But a social selling index, while maybe valuable to show what types of posts and engagement you're making, does it really quantify the relationships that are being created with prospects and customers? And it doesn't. There is really, I think, where we struggle is quantifiable outcomes that can be leveraged in order to substantiate the progress over time of social selling and to basically be the barometer of success or lack thereof.
Yeah,
you know,
and and
it,
and Dave agrees with you, Brandon.
thanks,
Dave
Dave.
and and I do too. It'd be interesting to hear Mark Clausen's approach on this too, because I know they've done a lot within
Mhm.
working on profiles, but now I know they're really working on going to that next level on how
Yeah.
you not only what you show up in, but how you show up once you get there.
Yeah, I think it really is a pivotal point for teams to consider what their social selling formal program is. And I think here's one of the challenge, to be very honest, and I might really piss some people off, but the social selling program has been built by marketers, not by salespeople. And rightfully so, what marketers care about is images, pictures, things that look good on a billboard. Brand, right? But what we care about in sales is, are you filling pipeline? Are you having conversations? Are you moving them down into the opportunity? What objections are you experiencing and how are you overcoming them? How are you closing deals? You know, that is social selling. I think we really just all kind of screwed up at the beginning of this thing, that social became a marketing role instead of a sales role. And I feel like that's kind of the root cause of a lot of these challenges that companies are experiencing. Now I'm ready for the tomatoes to be thrown at me. Who did I piss off?
I don't see any tomatoes yet. No, I think I think it's just unfortunately or unfortunately the way things have evolved.
Mhm.
But I do think that social, as you said, Brandon, started off as a marketing related thing. Brand, how are we represented? How are the comments are, versus a tool to what you said, to drive sales and to drive prospects and so forth. So it's shifted, right? It's part of it is shifted in its evolution from one side to the other. Yeah, and Mark says here that we start with a solid profile that is authentic and establishes credibility, which is great. There's absolutely
Mhm.
makes total sense as a place to start. But you're not done. To your point,
Just
Brandon, it's
don't
like
end there. Yeah.
yeah, I can dress up, but if I don't go do anything, probably not going to end up with the result I'm looking
Yeah.
for. All right, so I'm going to go to go ahead. Sorry.
Real quick, Tom, I just wanted to invite everyone else as we're going through these. We know that we're talking and it's not the most interactive show, but those in the comments would love to hear, your questions about any of the data or your own data points that you've come across, that you've seen that are worth bringing into this conversation.
Yep, totally. So, and adding Mark, speaking of that, Mark adding here another comment is he says, we're helping those sellers publish meaningful content, not reposting, but adding solid personal insights that matter to our
Mm.
clients. I mean, that's great. See, that's really taking that enablement aspect of it to another level.
Yeah.
All right. So mine comes from HubSpot, and this is from an article on HubSpot. They said social sellers acquire and convert more customers. What does that mean? Social sellers have a larger volume of new customers, 65% versus 47%, and better customer conversion, 48 versus 31%, compared to those who are not using social media for sales. And I'll underline for sales that are there. The reason I liked it, is, again, we've talked a lot about this on the show, is a lot of people who sort of, well, I don't know about this, or, I don't have time for social or to do social related activities or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This just to me continues to reinforce that, first of all, social is not it's not an and or an or, one or the other, right? It's an and. You're doing this with some of the other things you're doing by incorporating that into your sales motion, into your playbooks. What this is saying is your probability of success goes up. So if I don't know, every time, I know sales is all about success, and you say, Carson, probabilities and, getting the most out of what you're doing every day. So to me, this is just a turbocharge it reinforces the idea that this is a turbocharge on things that you're already doing.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the high percentage shot.
Yeah.
You're drafting. I mean, in my mind, let's use the sports analogies we like to make, or at least I like to make. You're drafting your team, your arsenal of tools and mechanisms that you're going to use to be successful in sales. Why wouldn't you be drafting the higher percentage shots? I mean, it's back to the whole Moneyball thing that we've talked about many, many times. That frankly, when I talk to customers, our customers, that's what they're looking for: new logos and growth within their existing customers.
Yeah.
And this is proven to be the best way to go out and sign new business and to nurture relationships over time. I want to make a quick statement, though, that it's not the end all be all. I love still the value of the field the field sales, the face-to-face. And I think Brandon made this point earlier really articulately. It's that there's a lot of progress that can be created, cultivated, and nurtured remotely that we never could have done before because we couldn't get the meeting. There were geographical barriers. There was a lot of travel that was required to do it. So, what's amazing is the face-to-face conversations or the travel scenarios that can be created because of meeting somebody on LinkedIn or social selling. And that's the real value, because here's the thing. I'll make a football analogy that I did on a podcast last week. You can make a lot of short rushes, for inches or yardage with digital tools, right? So you can have forward momentum. And a lot of times you can create in-person meetings that never would have existed without making those first touch points on LinkedIn or social tools. And you know what happens when you meet face-to-face? It's like those long receptions, because you can considerably move the ball down the field. And if the social tools can beget the other, my gosh, what a powerful combination that is.
And that goes back to Brandon's hugs, not handshakes, right? When you meet in person, you're not like, just nice to meet you. It's like, oh my God, we've been buddies, right? Well, that moves that long pass, as you said, down the field a lot farther. So
yeah, it's the way that we use lunches and dinners and happy hours and things, right? The first time we go and meet a client in face to face, what do we want to do? We want to get them out of the office and get them in a fun environment. And why did we do that? Because we wanted to make it more personal. We wanted to get more human with them. We have the ability to do that here between social, move it to a Zoom. It's not perfectly the same as face-to-face, but I think this data point and this conversation, Tom, that you brought up, I always want to throw in there. This is why we've got to change the dialogue around social selling or digital selling or whatever. So often the first question becomes from a sales leader, how much time is this going to take? Right? They're thinking that we don't have time. We don't have time. And we've got to get out of that mindset that, we're going to try to we're going to sprinkle a little bit of this in there. It's kind of like the parents that send their kids to our kids' Christian school. It's like, go sprinkle a little bit of that Christianity in there and help them be a little bit of a better person, right? It's not that. We got to take a look at this and go, what are the challenges we're facing? We're not generating enough first calls. What are our best opportunities to do that? And what do we need to put in place, train, systems, all of that in order to get it?
Yeah,
I get a little fired up about that one. I get tired of the question.
Do you care a lot about this, Brandon? Do you have a point of view?
It's such a short-sighted question.
Yeah.
How much time is it going to take? Right. It's like, I want to shake people and go, you're looking at it totally wrong.
Right. No, if you're looking at it like this is a little side project and it's not something I'm building into the DNA of what I'm doing, then we're inherently looking at it the wrong way. Right. And just before we move on, Carson, Daniel said you could have fumbled that one before.
Absolutely. Easily could have. I mean, sometimes, those butterfingers let you down.
Yeah. So Carson, what's your next fun stat here?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna cheat, and I can pick another one if the time allows for today. But I'm gonna combine these two because I think they're really more pertinent together, and you'll see why when I outline them. But it's 2 bullet points. One, 96% of business professionals would be more inclined to buy products or services from businesses whose sales professionals understand the needs of their business. That's pretty telling. And I think it's really important, as a lot of times we talk about and we can't pay lip service to actually knowing the state of our customer's business. I was on a really inspiring call with a member of my team earlier in the week, and they were challenged. They were put on the spot by a customer executive. You tell me what we do. And fortunately, this person was very well armed. And from your earnings call, I heard this and this, and how you are constructing some new layers to your business, some of the priorities, some of the commercialization models, some of the new ones, some of the things that you're doing with your existing business models, et cetera. And this executive was blown away. They were like, that's the most impressive answer I've ever gotten. We need to be able to give those types of answers to our customers. And That brings me to the last part of the statistic, or the second bullet point. Only 36% of B2B executives believe that sales reps truly understand their business problems and offer clear solutions. And why is that? Well, it's for the same reason that, Brandon always hears social selling sucks. It's because we show up with these half-baked or, phony or, regurgitated great things about our solution and our company and our product, as opposed to really getting to know our customers and really understanding their business model, understanding where they have challenges meeting their customers where they are. Because believe me, if you're able to de-risk the decision to go with you, and you're able to show up with a unique perspective around what they're grappling with, which you can, by the way, you can arm yourself with all of these things in ways that we've talked about before: subscribing to business journals, following them on Sales Navigator, seeing when there's a change to a C-level, a merger, an acquisition, a divestiture, all of these things. Paying attention to their earnings calls. I'm going to be on an earnings call tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. All of these things that can arm you so that when you show up, you're not just sending a pitch slap in direct message. You're actually showing up with unique perspective based on your earnings call, based on the recent announcement that your company made. That helps you show up better, and it eradicates that gap. So these B2B buyers, they know you actually know what you're talking about. Credibility is key.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience that I think really, really hammers home what you're talking about, Carson, recently. I had done that with a prospect where we'd really built two parts. We really took the time to understand their business needs, but we had also, through the stuff we've been talking about, built an online relationship before we even had in our case for software, a discovery call, right? We do discovery calls for the piece there. I was amazed when we got on the discovery call about how open they were willing to talk about their business and not standoffish as well. It was like almost like, whoa, that's more data than I need to know. But they were totally willing to have that conversation and tell, the dirty laundry and everything else that was going on and stuff they were running into. I mean, think about that from a sales perspective, right? You have that intel, that gives you a major, major advantage on how to position your solution and position yourself and position your company for that win. I mean, how many times have we ever gone into initial meetings or discovery calls and you're like you just know you're getting BS answers or you're not getting the full answer, and it's hard to. So when you can come into those sort of discovery and initial meetings and all of that, and there's a trust there, oh my God, and that only happens from everything we just talked about.
Tom, what caused that? What helped them go so open komodo with you in that situation?
Because they knew us. By the time we got to the point of having the discovery conversation, right, in the process, they knew there was already a pre-existing relationship. And by doing the research on the business and asking the questions in the discovery call that were relevant to their business, they even opened up even more. And I felt like we had peeled the onion like 5 layers rather than 1 layer on that one call.
Yeah. And they knew you and Kevin because of your show and your social presence and what you comment on and what you publish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that was clear for everybody. They felt like they knew you before you even had the discovery call because of your activity inside of LinkedIn.
Yeah. I'll just call it the social activity collectively, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was LinkedIn, the other show that we're part of, all that kind of, whatever it is, right? The dark social aspect of it, if you want to call it that. And some one-on-one conversations on LinkedIn as well. But all of that led to the point, by the time we got there, we were trusted. And that's what we want to have when we can get there, because that gives us a huge, huge advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the ideal, right? It starts becoming almost inbound. Like I think I shared this a couple of weeks ago, the direct message I got from somebody that's, very high up in a large company and didn't even know this person was really paying attention to the show. And I got a message saying, "Hey, I'd like to have a conversation with you about XYZ." And it's all very confidential right now, but it was more of the comfortable, know you, feel like I know you because I've seen you on this screen over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Guess what? You were the trusted advisor.
Right.
But,
and you got to act like one to be one.
But I think to hammer home both of those points, Carson, it's so easy now, or so much easier to get that intel and to have that understanding of the business and to show up so that you're not one of the 36% that companies believe don't really have any clue about what they're doing.
That's right.
All right, Brandon, you're up.
Yeah, this one's not going to surprise anybody that I picked it. A lack of confidence about engaging on social networks is the most common problem sales teams face when it comes to social sales. And then here's a detail of it, and this is by Forrester, so it's not some schlep throwing these numbers out. 32% of those surveys said that their sales team's lack of confidence when engaging people on social networks presents the largest obstacle to creating and sustaining a successful social selling program. What does that mean? We are not taking this serious enough to train people how to do it. And I go back to that networking event analogy. Did you send salespeople to networking events without coaching them on how to have a conversation, how to start a conversation, how to not be a jerk in a conversation, right? What do you do? How do you ask for a business card? How do you try to move it from the networking event to a coffee or something? Like, we train people how to do that for years. Why? Because that was their first engagement with a prospective customer that had some value attached to it. And now we use social LinkedIn stuff by like, go engage with people.
Well, I mean, not even networking events, but look at all the work that goes into, training cold callers or SDRs or BDRs. And we're going to use Gong and we're going to record all the calls and we're going to analyze those and see how they went and all of those
Right.
types of things, right? All of that is to try and enable the team to be better at what their skill is. And yeah, there's a skill here that involved in this. I think the confident issue, which I think is kind of funny, is right, as salespeople, we tend to be the more outgoing, extrovert type people where we inherently tend to like to meet people and work with people. Yet I think there's a reticence for a lot of people to feel like they're putting themselves out there online for everybody to see. It's very different than a one-on-one conversation. Fair enough. I mean, that's totally legitimate. But then, yeah, work through that process and do that.
Right. And come up with things. I mean, I always go back to when I owned By Design and we had 65 people in a call center. What did we do? We did mock calls, right? We put people in a position to test and try and work out the nerves. Like, one of the things that I do in my training is we do test comments. Right? If commenting is going to be such an important part of engaging and building rapport and trust, let's go test it. Let's go practice it.
Yeah.
Get you confident before we send you out in real life.
Yeah.
What I love about this is how all these statistics really feed one another. And there's so many different correlations. Obviously we just highlighted, and this was my runner-up, by the way, my on deck stat that Brandon just called out. You look at earlier, most everyone believes and agrees that social selling works, but only half of organizations have some kind of formal process or program. And that's not even saying what level of that is quality. And on the flip side of that, we know that buyers would buy from us if they thought we knew what we were doing or talking about. And what this one that Brandon calls out outlines, basically 87% of the people that say, hey, these are the blockers to social selling, it falls in those three categories: that they have lack of confidence engaging, which that can be fixed with formal training, right? Training people on how to engage. We've talked about quality of messaging before. I talked about how I've done social selling for a decade. My messaging that I've leveraged has evolved considerably over that decade. You've got to continue to level up and meet customers where they are and change based on what you're hearing. You've got to take that counterintuitive approach. Next being, a limited understanding of social selling products. I bet a lot of sellers would be hard pressed to name 10 tools that they use or could use from a social selling perspective. A lot of people think LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn's great. And LinkedIn is highlighted in this article as the #1 platform for all this. However, where are your buyers? Are they on Twitter? Are they on Instagram? Are they on TikTok? Are there tools that you could be using to read your buyer better? We've talked about some on this show. Humantic AI, Fist Bump. I use Octopus for certain elements of the automation that lead to conversations or that can execute sales plays at scale. So list out these tools, figure out where your buyers are. You've got to know who your buyer is, where they are, how you can engage, and it's all of those different ways. It's not just one. There's no silver bullet to social selling. And then obviously last, but certainly not least, is that general lack of training. That goes back to, hey, it's great that we're acknowledging that we need social selling. And it's great that we're starting to develop these training programs. But if we're not consistent with it, and we're not training everyone on all the tools and the methods, and we have no quantifiable way to track it, it's going to be like every other sales training that's ever been done. It's going to be practically useless.
Yeah. And I think also there's been a hesitation around social because of lack of data. I mean, I heard this 3, 4, 5 years ago. If we can't get data, we're not going to put people in doing it. And there was lack of data, especially in LinkedIn. There's data you get on the business page, but do you get data on a individual sales rep's activities? And now there's tools to do that. Obviously I'm partial to Fist Bump, but that was one of the things that we put in there is, can we actually validate and document, or document to validate social activity, put it into CRM so you could see its value on deal flow? And we're there now with not just Fist Bump, but other technologies. And so we're running out of excuses. You've got to start embracing this and training the team and take it as a legit communication tool as part of the sales process.
Yeah, we could do a whole article or a whole episode, I think, on what you're referring to, Brandon, which is really the KPIs and attribution. Attribution has always been a big part
Yeah.
of tracking both marketing and sales. And yes, it's been hard to track attribution. Like, how do I attribute what we're doing here? Is it really leading to it? But to your point, that gap is being closed. So you can start to attribute, you can see the results. The cool thing is you start to see the results, if aligns to everything we've just been talking about, it helps make it more of a kind of a no-brainer. So yeah, I think that's definitely going to help accelerate this by having the ability to have visualization or visibility into what you're actually doing. In the interest of time, I'm going to combine my next two together like you did, Carson, because I think they're related here. This is coming from, and the kind of, these two statistics relate to what we've been talking about, but I just think hammer it home. So my first one, this is from the LinkedIn State of Sales report. Trust is the most important factor in closing deals for both sellers and decision makers. Research shows that 40% of professional sellers and 51% of decision makers believe that trust is the key ingredient in closing deals. Well, I think, that we just talked about all of those things. I think I would bet that's even higher and getting higher every day. That almost seems low in some ways. And then the other statistic was 31% of B2B professionals say they can build deeper relationships with their clients thanks to social sales. So yeah, thanks to social sales. So again, nurturing relationships plays a key role in the success of any company. A third of business professionals interviewed say one of the key benefits of social sales is the ability to build more meaningful relationships with their clients. So again, same thing that we're having there. And I wanted to spotlight here real quick before we move on, Dave's comment. Maybe that's where you're going to go, Brandon.
I was going to shout out for Dave and then shout out for Mark for acknowledging it, because Dave's been working his butt off and learning new skills. What I love about Dave is he's an experienced sales guy. It's not that he doesn't know how to sell. It's that he's putting in the effort and has the passion to learn this new technology, this new medium. So apply everything I knew, but apply it into a new manner. And he's doing a great job with it.
Well, and as he says, he started off with 0, right? So what a great test. We'll have to have him on and have him take us through his journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, of course, we're spending more time than we think. Let's get a couple more. Carson, do you have one that you want to? I'll give one for you and Brandon to wrap up.
Yeah, the one that jumped off of me was, more than 50% of revenue across 14 major industries is generated by social sales. Now, keep in mind, I would imagine that that's not all accumulated because of savvy social sellers. It means that buying decisions are being made on social. So you're either there or you're not. And you're either meeting these buyers where they are with valid perspective or you're not. And so transactions,
Mhm.
business, ball's moving down the field online. Are you there or are you not? And I think that really jumped out at me.
Can you read that again, Carson? What was the statistic again?
More than 50% of revenue across 14 major industries is generated by social sales. This includes some of the largest industries such as healthcare, advertising, logistics, and computer software. Social selling has become the dominant sales strategy in the new millennium, and harnessing its potential can be the difference between failed and successful enterprises. That one jumped out at me. I know that a lot of social selling happens because organizations are obviously available online, and obviously there's a lot of marketing that's being done to funnel messages to people. So it's not just people like us leveraging these tools to connect, but I think it speaks to the potential that's out there and the appetite that buyers have to buy based on online interaction and data.
Well, and I think the one thing that jumps out to me, one of the most on that is the industries, right? The fact that
Yep.
this isn't limited to tech and even the industry that my software company we work with and lead smart a lot is old school, manufacturers and distributors and people like that aren't sitting at a computer every day. Yet more and more, they're on, whether they're on their phone or whatever, they're exposed to social media, LinkedIn, involved in LinkedIn, more and more conversations. What also I'm finding, not to go off on a tangent, but the industry that we're working with, manufacturers and distributors, right? People are interested in what goes on in a manufacturing plant. They're interested in some of the things that go on behind the scenes. And we're seeing companies use that as a way to spotlight what they do, bring in visibility by kind of pulling the curtain and showing some of the things that the normal person doesn't see day to day. So just a lot of opportunity for some of these other industries to really capitalize on what you're just talking about.
Yeah,
Brandon, wanted to kind of take us home.
sure, I'll do that. I was going to comment on what you were saying, but you wrapped it up great. I just wanted to throw an exclamation point on it. Yeah, so the last one, and this was from CSO Insights, and I intentionally picked all the data that didn't come from LinkedIn's research. Obviously, I love LinkedIn, but I feel like it could be a little self-serving at times. But CSO Insights is 39% of B2B professionals say social selling reduces their search time, while 33% say it increases their number of leads.
Can we
Okay,
make sure that the people that claim they don't have enough time to do this read those stats?
exactly.
Can you read that one more
Exactly.
time?
Yeah,
Brandon, can you read that one more time?
sure. 39% of B2B professionals say social selling reduces their lead search time, and 33% say it increases their number of leads.
Amazing.
Okay.
And I think too, those numbers are probably not as high as they should be. If you're truly comparing like outbound call time to the amount of time you spend using social to generate the same amount of conversations, at least with my customers, we see an 80% increase in accepted connection requests within 30 days, and a 40% conversion of those into a first conversation, and then about a 30% acceleration in the entire sales cycle. Those numbers save time.
Yeah, well, they save time. They boost morale. Think about it for a sales team and for a sales organization, and they certainly create results. What were remember the statistic I think we talked about a few weeks ago, the BDR, the cold outreach, cold calling, 1 in 1,000 turns into an opportunity, right?
Right.
So what you just talked about, probably by applying those same sort of actions is maybe now, I don't know, even 100 out of 1,000 are turning into some sort of healthy connection versus 1 in 1,000, literally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Dave is saying that the quality of the leads and conversations are better also, which exactly nails everything that we've been talking
Right.
about today.
By far. And it goes back to Carson, you were saying it earlier. I mentioned earlier, social, and Tom, I think we all talked about it. I mean, social gives us this opportunity to be known before a conversation, to be, they come into it going, I feel like I know you. And go back to what you said, Tom, a few weeks ago, that Kevin was walking down the aisle at a show and people were going, "Hey, I love your show." And he's like, "I didn't even know you watched the show."
Right.
Right.
No, completely true. Well, I think maybe we can let Mark here put an explanation point on everything we
Ooh.
talked about today.
Beautiful.
Mark, man, stepping up.
Well said,
So,
Mark.
cold email from unknown people is dead in capital letters. Cold calls are nearly impossible to reach people in the new post-COVID world. Social selling has to become your superpower. I think we should drop the mic and go home.
We should.
Um,
I see
all right.
Dave.
Well,
Dave, I'll shoot those stats to you. Well, I'll throw them out real quick. It was 80% increase in accepted connection requests, with 40% conversion to a first conversation, and then an overall 30% acceleration in the total cycle. Now, it didn't mean they closed, but even a deal that was lost, it accelerated the typical time frame by 30%. So it's saving time. And that's because when you feel like you have some sort of a rapport with a salesperson, you don't ghost them, you don't leave them hanging. You move down the process with them and you let them know, "Hey, we're not interested."
that's true. Right. You get the feedback loop versus just being left, struggling in the
Yeah.
wind. Well, Dave, Mark, Brandon, everybody who jumped in today to comment, great conversation. Yeah, we'll get you the link. There's a bunch more of these that are in here. Any final thoughts before we sign off for the week?
No, what I'm hearing is social selling is where it's at. So let's
We should consider doing a podcast or something on this subject.
probably so.
Yeah,
Yeah, and maybe
yeah,
building
Hey,
a community around it.
yeah. A community. That's a great idea. We should call it
yeah,
Modern Seller HQ. That's what we should do.
man, you guys are brilliant. I'll tell
Yeah.
you what I haven't heard today though is a movie reference.
No, he said Moneyball. He said Moneyball earlier.
Yeah,
Well, I
Moneyball
did.
doesn't count anymore.
That's not a fair one. I actually have two kind of working around in my head. One was, I think of, what we were talking about earlier, moving the ball down the field. Even sometimes you got to have, like Al Pacino says, in any given Sunday, you've got to have the peace with inches, because every forward momentum with a customer, with a prospect is positive momentum, and you find peace with inches. But, the superpower reference really got me thinking about how, as an old seller, when I first started at Microsoft years ago, I felt kind of like Clark Kent. I was just kind of fumbling and bungling around. I didn't know what in the world everybody was talking about. I didn't have any technology experience, no cloud background. But once I started leveraging social selling,
Super.
up and away.
Up and I love it, Carson. Bravo, my friend. You pulled that off. And I promised people when I shared the show today, I said Carson's not going to bring one, but two movie references today.
I will never let you down.
I know.
All right,
And
Brandon, you seem much more relaxed now and relieved. I'm glad that
that's
Carson came.
right. Well, I was wondering. I'm like, dang, where are they at? Bob Britton thinks he's adding Glengarry Glen Ross, and I don't know what that one is. What am I missing there?
Always be closing.
Ah, got it. I was thinking of a movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
There you
Well,
go.
thanks again, everybody. Carson, wrap us up.
Distinguished co-hosts and audience, thanks for being with us. Until next time, happy social selling.
Thanks, everyone.